In mid-September, the poultry industry here in the north was placed under surveillance after a strain of avian influenza was detected, or at least that is what we thought. Because after 8 farms, 7 in Blue Creek and 1 in Shipyard were placed under quarantine, and 28,100 broilers and 2,240 layers in 2 of the farms were destroyed, word tonight is that it was all a false alarm. According to Armando Cowo, manager of the Belize Poultry Association, 2 Fridays ago, the industry found out that the country had received a false positive after all samples sent to the National Veterinary Services laboratories came back negative.
There's no test that is 100% accurate. And so now and again, you would get a false positive, what we consider a false positive, which means that although it's showing something there, when you go and you dig deeper, you'll find out that there's nothing there, which is why it's important that the confirmation comes from the World Organization for Animal Health accredited laboratories that dig deeper into the issue to see if they can find the virus. Fortunately for us, the National Veterinary Services Lab of the United States Department of Agriculture is telling us that all the samples that went to their lab were not testing positive for the virus. So basically what we conclude is that it was a false positive. What happens is we send samples to labs, and those labs might come up with a false positive, which needs to be verified by the reference lab, in this case the World Organization for Animal Health reference lab. Like I said, the NVSL of the United States, and well, they're telling us there's no virus here. So obviously the other lab in the US at the University of Georgia came up with a positive that we cannot find. There are no more tests pending out there. All the tests that went out have come back. The established protocol is Baja does the test, which they did in country as well, and they also pick up positives, which when sent to NVSL came back negative. Tests have a certain reliability. Now, the capacity of each lab is different. The NVSL lab is equipped with more modern technology that can pick up the finer details. Even if there were pieces of the virus, they would have picked it up. But they didn't find anything. Because they also do genetic sequencing. So they would have picked it up. And they didn't pick up anything.
And even if the virus had affected the barns but was eliminated after biosafety measures were set in place, NVSL would have picked up the trace, says Kowal.
What we did in partnership with Baja, we went back to the first barn where supposedly the infection would have been. And we put in there what we call a sentinel bird. That bird was tested before it went in to make sure that it was clean. Those birds were put in the barns. So if the virus was there, they would have picked it up. They would have gotten infected. Okay? Those birds were sampled after the required number of days. They were sampled, and their samples were sent out to NVSL, and they came back negative. So the sentinel birds did not pick up the virus. There are certain diseases that we were screening for, and that is why we were asking Baja to send our samples to Georgia, to the University of Georgia, because they have done some work for us before. Okay? But they were not specifically looking for AI. They were looking for other diseases that we thought necessary to look at. And when everything came back negative for all the other diseases, then the next logical step was perhaps it's AI. look into it for us. And when they did look into it for us, they came back with a positive. Did they mix up our samples with somebody else's samples? I don't know. We can't speak for them. But we do know that they flag us with a positive. We went into high gear and we started doing sampling and testing across the board. And then we were getting some positives out of the Baja lab. So we said, okay, let's send these to NVSL. But the NVSL is telling us everything is clean.
Mr. Kawaso, the other barns that were tested, apart from the first one, were those samples also sent to the lab in Georgia, or it was simply Baja
No.
their test and saying, yes, positive for avian influenza?
After the results came from Georgia on the 9th of September, Baja went into high gear testing and sampling being done in country because they have a certain capacity. They can do serology and PCR, and the PCR was coming out negative, and they were getting some positives in serology. And then they decided that it needs further confirmation, so they were sending it out to NVSL. But everything is clean. They all came back negative.
So what happened is that we did not wait for those tests to come back from
Right.
ASL.
Right.
We went ahead and we depopulated barns that came back positive without waiting for the results from
Yes.
the lab that you're talking about.
Right. That's what happened.
To date, there is not telling what disease the poultry industry suffered back in September, but it was not the avian influenza. So, are we looking at a case where someone dropped the ball? While some might tilt to that conclusion, it's rather a case of prevention combined with lack of communication, says Kawal.
We know for a fact that the process had taken some time. And if it was a positive, and we had been waiting for those results, then we would have been in far bigger trouble. So we did not wait. We went into meeting with Baha, and Baha said, look, this is what we got to do. And we supported them with that because we know that we have to be cautious. Right? We have to be cautious. It's a deadly disease, and we didn't want it in the country, and it's not present in the country.
Okay.
So you have to take measures. You can't wait. These labs are not working only for us. They have samples from all over the place, and you join the line, or you don't know when you will get the results. So we work with what we have on hand at the time, and those decisions were made.
The owners of those farms that were depopulated, have they been informed about the fact that basically there was no avian influenza?
Oh yes, we have informed
Farms were
everybody.
depopulated.
We have informed everybody. Everybody knows.
Their reaction?
Everybody knows. Huh?
Their reaction? Any reaction from them?
Well, yes, they're asking us to be more cautious. We said yes, we're willing to be more cautious. We don't want to just be going out there depopulating at will or at whim. But they also need to live with the reality that they need to pick up slack in their barns as well. Like if they're having problems, they know they need to report to us early so that we can pick it up early if there's any problem. So we will improve on that communication aspect because the experience is showing some communication gaps in the whole system, and we need to address that.
With losses ranging from 7,000 all the way up to 100,000, stakeholders of the industry are looking at compensation for owners of the farms that were depopulated.
We are hoping that some sort of assistance will be given because there's only 3 farmers who really suffered losses. One of them was the biggest one, a big farmer. He suffered losses in excess of $100,000. Whatever help can be given to him would be appreciated. Um, Definitely, he needs help. No one in this country can afford to lose $100,000, and I'm sure that we need to look at that closer and see how best we can get him back on his feet. But even so, there were two extremes. There's one big farmer, one medium farmer, and one very small farmer who got affected. And you might say, well, the one farmer lost 100,000, the small man lost maybe. I'm not too sure. We haven't finished calculating everything, but his thing is he lost perhaps about what, maybe $7,000 to $10,000. But for him, that's gold. So we need to look at this in more in depth and see how best we can move along with them.
The Ministry of Agriculture is yet to comment on the results sent from NVSL.